Some movies and cartoons tell incredible stories, but unfortunately, not all of them have happy endings. In fact, some are downright tragic.
Thanks, guys.
Do you know the most heartbreaking endings in cartoons and movies? The latest cinematic adventure of the world's fastest hedgehog was spectacular, and one of the coolest things about Sonic 3 is that despite being packed with humor and jokes, it tells a much sadder story, especially compared to the first two movies. A big part of the seriousness comes from Shadow's tragic past and character development. However, what truly made fans cry was Dr. Robotnik's sacrifice. The scientist, who had been Sonic's greatest enemy, turned against his own grandfather to stop the world's destruction. He even gave an emotional speech to Agent Stone before blowing himself up along with the ship that was about to wipe out humanity. Everyone was hoping Eggman would get a redemption arc and eventually become friends with Sonic, but in the end, his story was cut short right when he found that redemption. The important thing is that people finally saw him the way Agent Stone always did, as an incredible person. This becomes even sadder when we remember that Dr. Robotnik probably became so cruel because he was lonely his entire life. That loneliness only ended when he met his grandfather Gerald. Yet despite that, he chose to betray him to save the very humanity that had always hated him. Just thinking about it makes you want to cry, right? I bet a lot of people would be relieved if Sonic 4 revealed that Eggman somehow managed to escape. And this is just the first of the 8 tragic endings in cartoons and movies that you need to know about. So get ready, because this is Cinewave. The amazing world of Gumball is hilarious, but anyone who has watched a few episodes of this incredible show knows it can get pretty bizarre when it wants to. And even its ending proves that, as the series concludes with the horrible fate of Rob. And no, he doesn't seem to die at that moment. Instead, the ground opens up, turning into a portal to the void, the place where all characters deemed mistakes end up. Rob desperately tries to escape, but ultimately falls into it, doomed to stay there for eternity. This would already be creepy and sad if it happened to any other character, but it's even worse for Rob, since he had already been trapped in the void before and knows firsthand how horrible it is. Escaping from there is almost impossible, so it's highly unlikely he'll manage to pull it off a second time, unless of course he returns in the Amazing World of Gumball movie or the new season that's in the works. What do you think? Disney has absolutely no mercy when it comes to making us cry, and Inside Out is proof of that. While it has plenty of funny moments, the movie also gets incredibly emotional, especially towards the end, when Bing Bong sacrifices himself to save Joy. His fate couldn't be more heartbreaking. He gets trapped in the place where all of Riley's forgotten memories go. In other words, he simply disappears, completely erased from her mind. And all of that just so Joy could survive, because if she had stayed behind instead, Riley would never feel happiness again. It's tragic, but it was the best decision Bing Bong could have made. After all, to Riley, he was just an imaginary friend she had slowly forgotten over time. Something that happens to almost all of us in real life. Have you ever had an imaginary friend? If you think you haven't, maybe you just forgot them, just like Riley forgot Bing Bong. Think about it. Speaking of which, let's pay tribute to Bing Bong. Comment #friend down below. Anyone who has watched How to Train Your Dragon loves the adventures of Hiccup and Toothless, which makes the ending of the third movie incredibly heartbreaking. Even though Hiccup deeply cares for his dragon, he has to let him go so Toothless can live in isolation with the other dragons, away from humanity. Fans of the franchise can't help but think of all the incredible moments these two shared while watching this painful and, in a way, cruel scene, even though it was the right decision. This ending isn't just sad, it also teaches us a valuable lesson. At some point in life, everyone has to say goodbye to a beloved friend or family member to move forward. At least this wasn't the last time they saw each other. Many years later, Hiccup, now older and with children, reunites with Toothless, and they get to fly together once more. But knowing they can never truly live together again is undeniably heartbreaking. By the way, How to Train Your Dragon is getting a live-action remake very soon. If it becomes as successful as the original trilogy, chances are the second and third movies will also get adaptations. So you better start preparing yourself to relive this devastating scene, this time in live action. It's going to be tough holding back the tears again, right? If there's one Disney animated movie that can make even a 35-year-old cry, it's Coco. The entire story is already a bit eerie, given that it revolves around Miguel accidentally ending up in the land of the dead. As the film progresses, it only gets darker and more emotional, especially at the end, when we find out that Miguel's great-grandmother, who was already very old and frail, has passed away. She is finally reunited with her father, who died when she was just a little girl. Endings like this remind us of how fragile life is, and that eventually we will all reach our own final moments. Miguel, who loved his great-grandmother so much, will never see her again in his lifetime. She will only exist in his memories. The one small comfort we have is that in this movie's universe, there is a confirmed afterlife where Miguel's great-grandmother and ancestors have gone. In real life, though, no one can be sure what happens after death, which is exactly why we should cherish every single moment we have. The Toy Story franchise is no stranger to emotional moments, but one of its most heartbreaking scenes comes at the end of the third movie, the saddest moment in the entire saga. We're talking about the scene where Andy, now grown up, gives away his childhood toys to a little girl named Bonnie. Since Andy is heading off to college, it wouldn't make much sense for him to keep Woody, Buzz Lightyear, Jessie, and the rest of the gang, but even though they'll miss him, Woody and the others won't get to see Andy ever again, which is truly tragic. Luckily, they do find a new home with Bonnie, and they're still with her in Toy Story 4, but there's a catch. Woody isn't her favorite toy. This goes to show that no owner will ever replace Andy because every person is unique and irreplaceable. You know what else is irreplaceable? Our videos! So hit that subscribe button to never miss out on our daily content about your favorite cartoons.
Am I crying? No, I'm not crying. You're crying.
Adventure Time went all out with its finale, as the last episode of the series focuses entirely on the deaths of Finn and Jake, the two main protagonists. That's right, the two characters an entire generation grew up watching met an incredibly tragic end, just like that. And it's even worse than you think. Instead of passing away together, Jake died long before Finn, most likely because he aged much faster, since a dog's lifespan is much shorter than a human's. Finn was never able to move on. He spent the rest of his life mourning his best friend, waiting for his own time to come so he could reunite with Jake in the afterlife. That way, the two of them could reincarnate together and go on new adventures. The problem was that after so much time, Jake had already reached a state of enlightenment where he no longer needed to reincarnate. He had found eternal peace. The two reunite and share one last adventure, but in the end, Jake makes the ultimate choice. He gives up eternal peace just so he can reincarnate and be with his best friend again. It's crazy how the show had the guts to kill off both of its protagonists in such a devastating way. After all, Finn was only truly happy during the events of the show, which took place in his early teenage years. Once he had to say goodbye to Jake, he spent decades mourning and only found happiness again when they reunited in the afterlife. Is there any cartoon character who suffered more than Finn? Even a show as wild as Regular Show wasn't afraid to give one of its most beloved characters a tragic ending. This happened in the series finale when Pops had an epic battle against his brother, Anti-Pops. Both of them were primordial forces of the universe, and their battle had already played out countless times before, but it always ended in a stalemate, causing the universe to be destroyed and restarted over and over again. In other words, the entire story of Regular Show kept repeating endlessly, always resetting after reaching the same conclusion. Since Anti-Pops refused to surrender, Pops saw only one way to break the cycle. He had to make sure both of them were destroyed for good. So he did the unthinkable. He hugged his brother and threw himself into the sun, taking Anti-Pops with him. Because of this sacrifice, Earth and the entire universe was saved. Mordecai, Rigby, Benson, and all the others were able to move on with their lives. A statue was even built in Pops' honor. It's heartbreaking to think that the only way Pops could save his friends was by sacrificing himself, but in the end, it was all worth it. The series even shows that the rest of the characters got to grow old, get married, and have kids, living their lives in peace. The video is almost over, but we've left two more awesome ones on your screen. If you want to keep the fun going, just click on the one that looks the most interesting. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.